Hello and welcome to the National Paralympic Heritage Trust YouTube channel, and welcome to this brand new series, Paralympic Athlete Interviews, with me, George Glinski, where we detail some of the careers of the finest GB athletes from around the country, and we talk about their careers, their lives, and just what it's like to be in Paralympic sport. Today, I am honoured to be joined by Helene Raynsford, who is a former world and Paralympic rowing champion. Helene, how are we doing?
Hi, lovely to see you today.
Lovely to see you as well. And, we wanted to talk a little bit about the rowing. We wanted to talk a little bit about the wheelchair basketball as well. But I wanted to chronologically look at your life and your career in sports. So you started off, I understand, in ballet. You were at the Royal Ballet School. So can we start off there and just talk about your career in ballet?
Yeah, I mean, I was the child that would be dancing up and down the aisles in the supermarket. Ballet was literally my life, and dance, all types of dance, but specifically ballet was what I was really passionate about. And I think probably maybe when I was about 5, my career aspirations were wanted to look after Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. And that was my career aspiration. But shortly after that, it turned to wanting to be a professional ballet dancer. That really was where my focus was. And I was lucky enough to go into full-time education and at a professional ballet school. First at Elmhurst Ballet School and then at the Royal Ballet School. And it's a very intense environment. At the end of every year, you're assessed. And if you don't meet the grade kind of academically or in your ability in dance, then you have to leave. So I learned from a very, very young age that I had to work hard if I wanted to stay. And as an 11, 12-year-old, it's quite hard to suddenly have to leave your friends. So, you learn that that's it's quite an intense environment. But I learned so much in terms of tenacity and ability to pick myself up and being focused, etc., that really helped me in my career as an athlete.
Definitely. And you moved on to basketball a few years later. So how do you feel that grounding in ballet and being around that environment, that physical environment, and that, as you say, that very mentally stringent environment, how do you feel that benefited your career in professional sports?
Yeah, I think for me, I became injured like many, young people wanting to dance. I became injured and had to step away and went kind of on a usual sort of trajectory through A levels and kind of onto university. And yeah, I kind of fell into basketball really, having never played it at school. In fact, it wasn't really that sporty at school because I was just so taken up with the dance element. I think we used to play rounders on a Saturday, and we used to try and get the ball on top of the building so we didn't have to play it any longer. So and I really think that when I first went into basketball, it was great because it was a sport where I got to meet other people who had disabilities. I didn't really know many people at the time who had disability. And it was great to sort of pick up some of that kind of social connections, rehabilitation, etc. But yeah, really having known what it took to be a professional ballet dancer, it really those were very much transferable skills into sport, both in terms of the ability to keep picking yourself up, dealing with injuries, just being focused and diligent, and knowing that, skills, and you have to practice and practice and practice, a little bit like, ballet. I would spend hours outside of the class honing and practicing the particular skill. Would be the same with basketball. I'd spend hours, shooting hoops and perfecting that kind of skill. So it really, for me, was a huge transferable skill set.
And you spent 3 years with the GB basketball team, and you won 2 silver medals at the World Cup. So at that point in your career, just before you'd come into rowing, did that feel like the pinnacle, the sort of you'd achieved a great thing in sport, and this might be the peak?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest, because I always felt like I had so much to learn in basketball. I still felt like I was very, new to the squad, and I'd only I would say even 3 years into my time in the squad, I wouldn't necessarily say I felt like I was at the pinnacle. I really felt I had so much to learn from both the other girls in Great Britain and the other ladies around the world playing wheelchair basketball. So I think for me, I always felt I had so much to learn, so much to improve on. I don't know that I ever felt I got to as far as I could do within the sport, because I just felt there was so much I needed to really learn. But it was just by chance really that I ended up coming across rowing, and sort of ended up making that switch.
As I say, you came across rowing. How did that exactly happen? What year did you find rowing, and what year did you start?
Yeah, so rowing is not in my family. No one has ever been a rower at all in my family. I, at the time, was working for the Department of Health and Sport England. And I had to go to Dorney Lake, which obviously is the where London 2012 rowing took place. And at the time, there was a Rowing World Cup taking place. And I was there to appear in a photograph to show cross-departmental government working. So you can imagine how exciting that was going to be. I really had far too much to do in the office. I was desperate to get back. And one of my work colleagues convinced me to go and have a look at the rowing on the lake as we were heading back to the cars. And I think she was more interested in the men in lycra more than anything else. But she dragged me down the bank, and I was like, kind of trying to get back to the car quickly. And I thought, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Like, I really like the noise, the vibe, the environment of a regatta environment. There was just something about it. And then I bumped into a chap who was in a wheelchair and had Great Britain rowing team on his jumper. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that was a sport that was open to me. So I just got chatting to him, and he said, yeah, it is. It's a sport that you can do as a wheelchair user. There's a whole variety of different classifications that and boat classes in rowing at a world championship. He convinced me to go along to Ardingly Rowing Club over in Sussex. And it's this beautiful, gorgeous lake. And I literally would do a bit of cross training outside. So this was in 2005. I'd paddle a bit, look at the ducks and the sheep, do a bit of sunbathing. You know, it was chilled. It was not like intense training. It was just a bit of fun. And at the end of the 2005, at the end of summer, I was going to be going back to wheelchair basketball training because the season was going to start again. And the guys and girls at Ardingly convinced me to go to national championships, and they said, yeah, I'll just be jolly to Nottingham for the weekend. You know, you're going back to basketball, so you know we're not going to see you for a while now. So they convinced me to go, and they said, oh, you'll only have to row about 500 meters, and I thought I could probably just about do that. Well, they lied. I had to row a kilometer, and they came along with this like skimpy little bit of lycra, and they were like, you've got to wear this. And I was like, whoa, I'm a basketball player. We, you know, wear baggy clothing. So by the time I crossed the finish line, I was racing with the guys. It was my 6th time in a boat. I was utterly pants. And I crossed the line. Everything hurt. I was in such a state. I don't know how I made it down the course, quite frankly. But the one thing that got me was just the vibe and the feeling of a regatta environment. And for me, being out of my wheelchair and in a boat was great. Water is a great leveler when it comes to disability. So I really loved that freedom and that sense. And you may not think you may not think that ballet dancing and rowing have very much in common, because generally ballet dancers are very petite and rowers are generally very tall. But actually, it's quite a lot in common between the two. Something is around, you know, the timing, precision, the coordination needed to row is very similar to ballet, but also the way in which you have to apply yourself to the sport in terms of it is kind of, you know, everything. You have to, you know, the training, the diligence, the self-care and proactiveness in the way you have to look after yourself. It's very similar. So for me, there was just something I really missed about when I went back to basketball that I just really missed about rowing. So then on the 1st of January in 2006, I opened up my diary like I do every year, and I generally stop writing in it by the end of February because I get bored. And I put this whole list of things that I wanted to achieve. Generally, I didn't really achieve very many of the things that I would write in there. But on this one, I wanted to go to the Rowing World Championships in 2006. Now, this was, you know, massive dream. I was little me, didn't really think like anything else that I wrote that I was going to get there at all. But it was kind of, you know, these things that I wrote down, and to try and motivate myself, I changed jobs because at the time I was covering 7 counties. I changed jobs so that I was covering 1 county, and I moved to an area of public health that I had no experience in previously, literally because the office was just down the road from the rowing club in Guildford. So I moved to a rowing club that was a little bit close to home, and we started going out training there. The volunteers at the club would put me on the water every morning at 6 a.m. and we just went chasing this crazy dream of trying to get selected. for that World Championships. And if it hadn't been for the volunteers at Guildford, there's no way that I would have, got anywhere near there. But yeah, it paid off and got selected.
And you went on, you won a gold medal and you broke a world record a year after starting the sport. So what was it about rowing that came so naturally to you?
I think some of it is the way the application, the way you have to apply yourself in terms of the amount of training and the volume of training. We'd sort of train 2-3 times a day, 6 days a week. So that kind of the diligence and way you have to apply yourself. But again, I think it comes back to the whole movement. It is doing a really specific movement, and you might think, well, what does a centimeter matter when you're getting your blade into the water? But actually, it's very scientific, the way in which we approach rowing, and they'll cover your boat with sensors, and it can say to the exact point you're putting your blade in the water and the exact point you're taking the blade out of the water, and the idea is perfecting a movement, and that's very, very specific to professional dance, is perfecting movements.
Definitely. Did you enjoy that aspect, that the training? I know a lot of athletes, they come back and they retire and they think, oh, I didn't enjoy the training, I just enjoyed racing. Did you enjoy putting your body through hell?
I loved training and I hated racing. I was the other way around. Yeah, I would get so scared and nervous on race day. So racing for me was like really, really scary. But training, I loved. I loved goals. I loved having, the kind of the breakdown of what I needed to, because you can't go from zero to, Paralympic champion. You've got to have lots of little breakdowns along the way. And, you've got to have lots of gaps and goals and aspirations to kind of help you on that journey. So that's what I loved. I loved chasing those individual goals along the route. So yeah, that was, I really loved that element of it. But racing, oh my goodness, I was terrible on race day. So nervous.
And you mentioned nerves there, obviously switching from a team sport to an individual sport that, well, depends on the athlete, of course. Did you find that you were more nervous in having to have the sort of the points and the achievements of a side on your shoulders, or just your individual self?
I'm not sure that there was, it swings and roundabouts, I think, really. I think I actually preferred being, competing as an individual, because at the end of the day, if I messed it up, it was me who I was letting down, rather than obviously it would have been my the support team. They're clearly key. You only see the athlete out in the water, but there's a massive team of people who just get that athlete to the start line, never mind winning medals. But I would say that for me, I preferred being in an environment where if I screwed it up, it was my fault and my fault only. So from that angle, I think I preferred it. But I never felt as an individual, because the Paralympic program was quite close. We would be away from home for quite long times throughout the course of the year. So I would spend a lot of time with my team. So I never really felt like I was an individual. And also the Olympic and Paralympic team train at the same training venue. So you very much feel part of a team, even though I was an individual. I raced in a boat on my own. I very much felt part of a team. So I think I almost had the best of both worlds, quite frankly.
Definitely. You moved on. You talk about nerves again, the 2008 Paralympics, the biggest race of your life. What were the emotions like leading up to such a massive event?
Yeah, and we had changed so much in the year of that games. The World Championships in 2007 didn't go so well for me. I came fifth at those Worlds, and for me, there was many reasons why that happened, but I sat on the start line for that race in 2007, knowing we hadn't done everything we could do to make the boat go as quick as it could. And it was a horrible feeling. And I said, I'm never feeling like that again. Like, we are going to have to change things, get things working differently, working better. So myself and my coach had to work quite carefully to try and foster a better relationship and to make sure that we left no stone unturned, because I'd never wanted to sit on the start line and feel like that again. But I think, yes, the nerves were there, but I would say that in the run into the games, I was so focused on just my race and what I had to go out and do. And we spent most of the summer in Spain. So when the Olympics were on, we were watching it through a German TV channel, actually, and my German's not very good. So we didn't get the same hype and coverage that you would have done over here when watching it on the British channels, really. So we never really got the same buzz or vibe or the same feeling of how much the nation were behind the athletes. So for me, it felt very much like it was me, my support team, as in coaches, physios, etc., and my friends and family. And it felt like it was us on this mission rather than anything else. And I literally just kept totally focused on that. And each day it was, what am I doing today to make the boat go as quick as it can do on race day? And that's literally how I kind of lived my life, in quite a focused and retentive way, really. So for me, yes, it was the nerves were there, but I tried to break it down as much as I could do to, like, it's just another 1K on a different stretch of water, and just try and focus on that.
And what are your memories of that event? Obviously, you had a bit of an equipment malfunction at the start. It seemed at the very beginning of the race that everything was going wrong. What do you particularly remember from that race?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that for me, the arriving at the course, we had everything so incredibly planned. And my coach went down ahead of time. I don't like being at, although I said I love the regatta environment, I don't like being around the regatta environment on race day because it tends to make my nerves worse. So yeah. I literally went down on the last possible bus that I could do. Did a bit of work with my physiotherapist to loosen myself up and get myself ready. I'm not very good at eating on race day, so I was drinking lots of the sort of drinks that I needed to give me the energy, and I'd had a banana and got in my boat, and as I was paddling up on the warm-up lake, I could hear this noise coming from my rigger, and I thought, what is that? And I could see there was a pin sticking up in a direction it shouldn't have been. So I thought, it's okay, just keep calm, go through your warm-up, continue, I'll get to the start system, my coach will be up there, he'll sort it out, it'll be fine. Anyway, I got to the start system and there was no coach, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So I pulled in front of the start system and sort of waved to indicate that I had an equipment problem. This lovely Canadian lady came over, and had Canada been in the final, I would have thought she was trying to, kind of scupper my chances here, because she could see the problem and she tried to tighten the pin, only she snapped it. So I was then thinking, oh my goodness, I'm sat on the start line for the biggest race of my life with a snapped pin in my rigger. How can this be happening? Everything was checked and triple checked, like yeah, I couldn't believe it. So we by this point then eventually my coach had arrived at the top, and he could see there was some commotion going on around me and my boat, so they speedboated him onto the start system from the side, and he then swapped over the pins, so I had a new pin in there, and pushed me off, and you're sat there, and they kind of call the 5 minutes a start line, and oh my goodness, the nerves. And I think for this time, this was the only race where I really got my nerves in check, and I just thought, we have done everything we possibly can do in this year. We have left no stones unturned, like absolutely not. We have done everything we can do. I just need to treat this as another 1K on a different stretch of water, ignore the people, ignore the crowds, ignore the hype of the event, ignore everyone around me, literally do what I know I can do in terms of getting the boat down the course as quick as I can do. And I literally just tried to forget about the nerves and think, actually, the only person the nerves are hurting is myself. And I just need to focus on just producing the best race that I know I can do. And literally just focused and waited for the start system, and they call out each of the nations, and the lights are on red, and literally before the gun goes you could hear a pin drop because it's just totally silent, and then just shot out the start line and off as quick as I could do.
And elation afterwards, I can imagine, an incredible feeling. Is it the proudest moment of your life, winning that gold medal?
I mean, yes, I think it is, but I think it's I always feel there are so many people who should share that moment, in terms of, I right back from the volunteers at Guildford who got me, rowing for the, so yeah, I mean, it is a moment of I think it's a moment shared, like like, I was very proud of the team and what the team produced, to be honest. Yeah, I think that, you know, that for me is kind of some of the things we overcame along the journey, because it's not, you know, you see the moments on the podium, but really those moments of like amazingness are very small compared to all the moments of, oh my goodness, this isn't going so well, you know, all the moments of real tough. Like, it's tough being a high performance athlete. It's not all wonderful and you know, exciting. So I think for me, I was proud of what we overcame, especially in that final year. But I think, to be honest, as I came in across the finish line, I couldn't hear the klaxon or anything, and I literally, you cross the bubbles on the water and you know you finished, and I literally just collapsed in a heap in my boat. I was in such a state. And I could not have told you. I couldn't see straight. I was so exhausted. I had absolutely put myself in a hole, and I couldn't see straight at all. And I just crossed the line and just collapsed in the boat. And at that point, I was being called over by one of the support team, and it was it was the doctor. And I said, "Oh, Lucy, I don't feel very good." And she poured 2 bottles of water over me, because it was a really hot day. And she went, "You'll be fine, dear. Talk to the BBC." And I literally gave this garbled interview to them at the time, and it was it wasn't great. And then pushed off to then go to the medal podium and to the podium pontoon. And as I started to row my boat up, I then started being sick in my boat, which wasn't great, wasn't glamorous, and not the best of looks. But thanks to my retentive planning, I had a separate set of kit in my toolbox, which was in my wheelchair. So thankfully I could get changed quickly before I went on to the actual podium for the medal ceremony.
And you retired 2009 and 2010 as well, as a sort of a stop-start career in that sense. But you saw the massive change in Paralympic coverage from 2008 to 2012. There was a really big effort for the Games. Is there any frustrations, perhaps, that obviously in 2008, as you said, it was BBC coverage, but there wasn't the same coverage as there is today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the development and the progression of Paralympic sports. I mean, I don't think that, I think probably friends and family at home were frustrated they couldn't say watch as much as they could do now. But I think it's positive that we are now in a position where we've got so much coverage going on, and where we've got, you know, the coverage that's being done now by Channel 4 is fantastic in terms of the coverage they got for Tokyo Games and the coverage they're getting for Winter Games now. It's very different to how it was, you know, back in the day when I was an athlete. I certainly don't look back on it with frustration. I just think it's down to the excellent development of Paralympic sport, and the excellent development that, you know, the nation are more interested, which is excellent. I think the nation is seeing more when I was competing, they always wanted to write about, you know, oh, brave disabled athlete, like that's what they kind of wanted to report on. Whereas now it's different. It's not seen quite, it's not sort of seen as, you know, the brave athlete. It's more they're athletes who have disabilities, and that's kind of the way in which it's written about now. And there certainly has been a shift. I don't feel any resentment or frustration or whatever. I just feel it's just the development of the, you know, of Paralympic sports, and long may it continue, both with interest from broadcast. I think Channel 4 certainly have set the bar for other nations to try and follow, and hopefully that will still grow.
Definitely. It seems like a bit of a cliche question when you come to the end of your career. Were there any regrets at all? Obviously, you've been through so much, you've achieved so much, but were there any regrets, anything you wish you'd done?
I think the only one thing I wished I had done was going to, at the time I didn't know it was going, you know, that I would be retiring as such, but in 2008 I chose not to go to BBC Sports Personality of the Year, because we had a training camp starting the next day, and at the end of that week I was going to be having a really big test, and for me I was so focused, even though, you know, we'd come back from a very successful Paralympic Games in Beijing, I was still focused on what's the next target, what's the next thing. And for me, I chose not to go to that event, because I thought, no, I need to have a really good camp, and I need to pull out some really big performances at the end of this, the end of the week. And I might have been at the time reigning Paralympic champion, but there are always, you know, ladies there who are chomping at my heels to get my seat in the boat. So you always have to maintain the performance standards. looking back now, if I'd have known that I wasn't going to continue, I would have loved to have gone to that, because the BBC wanted to do, you know, with it being the first Paralympic rowing gold medal, they wanted to do various interviews and things like that, but I chose not to. So yeah, it's really weird. I think it's like, just that's probably my only real kind of regret in that time. But you do give up so much as an athlete, you know, the kind of parties, celebrations, etc. You know, you do miss those, but friends and family understand that that's just the way that sport is. You know, you have to be training, and going out partying isn't kind of one of those things you can do so much. So yeah, I do regret not going to that, but I didn't know at the time I would be retiring. So.
And in retirement, it depends on the athlete. Again, some people just step away from the sport completely. They put it in the past, but you've stayed very much involved. So as I say, you've got multiple roles currently in Paralympic sport. So why did you choose to stay involved in Paralympic sport?
So for me, it was important to give back. And it was, you know, I think for me that Paralympic sport has given me so much, and it is, I suppose it is both in terms of the high performance element, but just disability sport in as a whole. You know, it gave me kind of social connections that I mentioned earlier. It gave me rehabilitation opportunities. It actually gave me my first job, because I was a disability sport development officer, was my first job, which was very different from kind of public health and my general career. But and most importantly, it gave me independence. You know, that kind of getting involved in sport at a grassroots level, and that's priceless. You know, so for me, I think that it was important to give back, both on a grassroots level, but then also on a Paralympic level. And for me, I wanted to stay involved in the Paralympic movement. I wanted to use my skills that I had in my professional life back into the sport. So it was important for me to stay involved, and I think I've just been very lucky that opportunities have come along, such as, you know, having a secondment to work for London 2012 Games for 5 months. Like, that was just a great opportunity to see sport management from a different side, and event management. Yeah, I've just been lucky to have those opportunities come along, and been able to use my professional skills to sort of move the movement forward, really, both domestically and internationally.
And finally, I'll give you the floor on this one. You mentioned a lot of people in your career that have been, you know, massive to your success. Just finally, in closing, just some thanks for anyone who's helped you in your career, and anyone who's helping you right now in your new endeavours.
Oh, goodness me! Wow, where would I start? You know, I think there are just so many people to thank when you've got a kind of a career. I think it would be impossible to sit here and name all of them, really. I think my support team every year, every Paralympiad as such, when it gets to the date of my the anniversary of winning my medal, so kind of every 4 years, I always send a message out to my support team on the day that would have been medal day at the games, just to say, you know, thank you to them. So I do that every game cycle. I send them a photograph of me and them, and say thank you, you know, and still remembering what, you know, kind of everything you did. But there are just so many people, from like my family. You know, I would come home from training camp and my mum would come and collect my kit, wash it all for me, because I'd be absolutely broken at the end of a 2-week camp. And then the next day it would appear all back at my flat, all washed and folded and ironed and neat and tidy. You know, it's just the little things, you know, through even to now, those people who mentor me through, you know, my next career step, and the people like I chair the Athletes Commission at the British Paralympic Association, and you know, the people there who helped me push that forward, pushed our ability to have the athlete voice all the way through the organisation. There are so many people there who have helped push it. So there's too many people to name as individuals, but I think that as an athlete, well, as anybody, you need a support team around you, whatever it is you're going to want to go and achieve, and those people really are integral as an athlete.
Definitely. Well, Helene, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.